Working on your hip mobility into internal rotation is not going to do anything for your hip if you fail to strengthen in that newly acquired range of motion after you do mobility drills. What's going on? Blake here. If you're doing stuff that I share on my channel here to help your knees, your hips, and your low back feel better, stuff that focuses on improving hip internal rotation, there's something really important that you need to know about these types of drills. Any range of motion that you gain after unlocking more mobility in a joint, if you want to make that permanent and functional, you have to teach your body how to own that range of motion, how to use that newly acquired range of motion. Basically, you need to strengthen in that range of motion and teach your body how to move using its muscles through that range of motion. That's what locks in that mobility and makes it permanent. In simple terms, you have to get stronger in that new range of motion to lock it in and make it functional. Here are 5 of my favorite hip internal strengthening drills to do following hip mobility work. If you actually want to see some drills that actually can improve your hip mobility before you do these, which I highly recommend, check out the caption down below. So the first exercise is called sometimes a reverse clamshell. Basically, this is just a very simple exercise. You don't even need any equipment for this, but a foam roller is recommended. You basically just lay on your side like so, all right, hips bent at 90 degrees. And all that you're gonna do here is raise the ankle up, okay? The femur is actually rotating in. This is internal rotation of the femur. And this is just a great way to activate the hip internal rotators after you've done any type of mobility work, all right? A very simple and standard way to progress that is to simply add load to it, add resistance. Once you've been doing that for a while, it's become really easy. If you want to make it more challenging, add a band to the ankles, okay? The band should have enough tension so that it makes it a lot harder, but it shouldn't have too much tension so that it's really limiting your range of motion, all right? If you can go up this high without the band, and then with the band on, you're getting stuck in this little narrow range of motion, the band's a little too tense, all right? Again, the goal is to strengthen in that newly acquired range of motion to lock it in and make it permanent. So you really, when you're doing this, you have to be getting that ankle up as high as you can, all right? And basically, if the band really limits how high you can get that ankle, the band's too thick, all right? There's too much resistance on it, and you need to either ditch the band and go back to the body weight version until you get stronger, or use a lighter band. But that's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2 is gonna be called quadruped hip internal rotation strengthening. All right, not a very technical term, but basically quadruped means you're on all fours, all right? So you're gonna get in this position and you're gonna kind of actually spread your legs out like a bear, like that, okay? And with this drill, I really like this because this really stabilizes the pelvis and makes it so that it's very hard to compensate by moving the entire pelvis instead of isolating the hip joint. We're trying to isolate the hip joint with all of these, all right? So in order to do this, basically you're gonna kind of get into this position and then you're just going to lift the leg up like that, all right? As you can see, I'm not bringing my whole pelvis for the ride here. I'm really just isolating the hip joint and internally rotating it once again here. So again, you kind of have to play around with different positions that feel better. Some people like a really wide kind of stance. Other people might prefer a more narrow one. Obviously, too, if you're, if your knees are sensitive, don't do this on the hard cement floor like I am, because this doesn't feel very good. But effectively, the movement is this, all right? Again, the goal here is to get as much range as you can, all right? Getting that foot up as high as you can and turning both sides evenly, all right? That one, you're gonna feel a ton in the gluteus medius, which is a hip internal rotator. It's weak in a lot of people. That is an amazing way to strengthen these muscles. Again, I'm just showing you a variety of my favorite ones today so you can kind of pick and choose which ones you wanna kind of play around with and integrate yourself. But this basically is gonna be looking like this. Very hard to compensate with this. This is pure hip internal rotation, and it's another great drill to experiment with. I was looking a little dark there in some of those other clips. I apologize for that, but this is another drill that, you know, I don't even know what this is called, but this is yet another hip internal rotation strengthening exercise, okay? So what you want to do is wrap a band just above your knee and have it anchored off to the side, all right? Just like I am right now. You're going to kind of get into this pose right here, and then what you're going to do is you're going to drive the knee down like that, all right? What the band is doing is it's adding resistance to this motion, all right? You've probably seen people doing drills like this before without a band, all right? Because this is internal rotation of the hip. What the band is doing is it's pulling the femur out into external rotation and abduction, taking the leg away from your body. And it's adding resistance to the motion when you're taking the leg in, like this, all right? And that's why this is a powerful drill, all right? If sometimes this will bother people's knees, the medial knee, that's why I'm showing you a variety of exercises, right? So you can pick and choose the one that you find your body responds best to. But if this is bothering your knee, you can play around with the position of the ankle. Some people feel better with the ankle dorsiflex, pulled up like this. Some people feel better with the toes kind of pointed forwards, all right? But effectively, this is the whole motion right here. Yet, you know, it's another great one for strengthening the hip internal rotators. And if this bothers your knee, you could just simply do one of the other 4 exercises that I've shown today. But this is a solid one that I really like. And yeah, give it a shot. All right, so this next exercise is very similar to the first one that I showed. Okay, the inverse or reverse clamshell, whatever you want to call that. But this time we're seated and we're not on the floor with this one. So you can do this on a bench, you can do this on a chair. But it's kind of the same idea. You're going to be pinching the roller between your legs and internally rotating one hip at a time, all right? You don't need a roller, by the way, if you just want to pinch your fists together like this, put them in between your legs. We just need something in between your legs that you're pinching your legs together against. That's approximately the same diameter of a foam roller. So it's not critical to have a foam roller, just want to make that clear. But to do this, it's going to look exactly like the first exercise, except again, you're seated, all right? If you have a mirror in front of you, this can be a little bit more useful because you can assess your own range of motion. You can see yourself, all right, I'm moving through range here, all right? One thing I want to say with this is your compensations are more likely to show up here. If you're actually lacking hip internal rotation, the capacity, the range of motion to actually move that hip fully into internal rotation, you should have about 40 degrees of that, by the way. If you're lacking that, you're probably going to compensate here, all right? And if you have this compensation that I'll show you in a second, then you'll know that you'll probably benefit from going into the description and watching the hip internal rotation mobility drills that I show. Those unlock more range of motion. Remember, the stuff that I'm showing you here today should be stuff done after mobility work because we're trying to just take advantage of that new range of motion with all these drills that I'm showing you today, strengthening them to make it more permanent. But if you don't have a lot of range of motion to begin with and your leg looks like this, definitely go into the description and check out those videos. You know, one way that you'll know that you're tight here and you need hip mobility work is if you can't move, or, and this one is probably more important, if you're somebody that's gun-ho and you're like, I can do this, and you do this kind of thing, this is also a sign that you're missing hip internal rotation, okay? If you're missing hip internal rotation, what you're gonna wanna do is hike up the hip and bring down the rib cage on the side that you're trying to activate. So if I was missing hip internal rotation on this side, I would compensate most likely by hiking the hip up, pulling the ribs down. So it would look like this, all right? This is me moving my pelvis and my lumbar spine, creating the illusion that I'm producing hip internal rotation. That is, of course, a lot different than truly isolating the hip, not moving the pelvis, not moving the lumbar spine, and doing this, okay? So if your range of motion just kind of stinks, or if you're doing this, all right, then definitely get into the description, check out the mobility drills I have there. I have lots of them. But here, I've already showed it a couple times. We're trying to isolate that hip, not bring anything else along for the ride, and do this, okay? You should feel a nice contraction right here in the TFL, the gluteus medius. Of course, with this, if you want to make this more challenging, kind of like the first exercise, add a band to it, all right? The band should not reduce your range of motion. You should still have full range of motion. If it does reduce your range of motion, and now with the band you can only come out to here, the band is too thick. You need to loosen the band or get a band with less resistance or ditch the band altogether. But similarly here, same thing, trying to strengthen in that as much range of motion as we can, okay, without compensation. Again, what that's gonna look like, hip hiking up, rib cage coming down. The pelvis stays level, the lumbar spine doesn't move at all. You should not feel anything over here contracting during this. So I saved the most complicated, most fancy exercise for last. You certainly don't have to do this, but an ankle cuff comes in really handy for this type of drill. You could experiment with this with a resistance band instead. You just have to kind of wrap it around your leg in a weird way and anchor it to your ankle. But I like this one because it trains the hip internal rotators while the hip is going straight down and it's in a neutral position, all right? None of these other drills do that. They kind of all train the hip flex or the hip internal rotators with the hip in a slightly flexed position. The hip is bent. So it's good to train muscles at different angles if and when you have the capacity to do that. So for a drill like this, again, band, cable, if you have a fancy cable attachment and an ankle cuff like this, it can be really helpful. But what is happening here, the band is pulling my ankle across my body this way. My femur is externally rotating, all right? It's turning out, and this is adding resistance to the internal rotation, okay? Like this. And this is basically how you do this, all right? You're gonna find that this is very challenging. And again, that likelihood that you're gonna have to compensate, do this, is very high. So we're really trying to isolate that hip joint, all right? Turn it in as much as possible without bringing the pelvis along for the ride. A little bit of pelvic movement is okay and acceptable. As you can see, I'm doing it, but I'm really trying my best to isolate that hip joint, purely internally rotate that, again, without the pelvis coming for the ride. So that's actually a pretty interesting movement. I like that one a lot. Again, if you have an ankle cuff, you can kind of mess around with that, experiment with it. You know, you could wrap like a band around your ankle if you didn't have an attachment like this. But certainly any of the other exercises I showed you today are also going to be suitable if you don't even want to mess with this whole thing. Not a ton of volume is needed for these exercises if the goal is simply to lock in range of motion and make it more permanent. You can pick and choose which of these exercises you like the best, which ones seem to bring about the most changes in your lasting mobility. But I typically have my online coaching clients do anywhere between 2 sets of 10 to 20 reps of any of these exercises. They can be done as a warm-up before you train your legs. They can be done as a part of a cool down or just part of an at-home daily corrective exercise routine or protocol. That's it. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Do that down below. Give this video a like if you found this useful. If you want me to make videos on stuff in particular, let me know in the comments down below. If you want me to serve you at a higher level, you're a little bit confused as to what you should be doing for your posture, your mobility, your muscle imbalances, your body feels worse with training and exercise, sitting, standing, walking for long periods of time. If you're a little bit too complex and you need some more assistance other than hanging out on YouTube, check out what I have to offer down below. I have different options, one-on-one coaching, etc. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.